Welcome to the About podcast. Here we explore your financial health in simple and easy to understand ways.
Well, hello everybody, and welcome back to the About podcast, where we explore all things financial health related. My name is Jeremy Scott. I am one of your hosts, and joined ably by Roy Hucke. Roy, how you doing?
Hooky like cookie.
There you go.
I'm doing awesome.
Fantastic. So today we've got something pretty excited to talk about.
You've been geeking out, buddy.
I have been.
This has been awesome.
So we're going to talk about donor advised funds. But before we get started, Roy has something he needs to share with us.
So I have a disclosure I'm going to read. So number one, I just want to let everybody know that this is our first guest that's coming in digitally.
Yes.
So I'm really excited about that. But I'm reading this because we have disclosure because it's required by her firm, Raymond James. So I'm going to read this to get this out of the way. But Raymond James Charitable is the brand name for the Raymond James Charitable Endowment Fund, an independent nonprofit organization with a donor advised fund program. Raymond James Charitable is a client of Raymond James Trust and is not an affiliate. Raymond James does not provide legal and tax advice, and prospective donors are urged to confer with their own independent legal and tax advisors regarding the legal and tax implications of utilizing the Raymond James Charitable Donor Advised Funds. End scene on that one.
All right. Thank you. People, if you're a fan of our podcast and you hang out all the way to the end, you know there's a little disclaimer that happens at the end there, and that's because this is a regulated industry and we take things important, and there's important things that happened, and so
it's not like you when you work with God, right? You
no, I can say
do it.
I can say whatever I want about God. You know, it's a great freedom I have. So that's good. Well, welcome. We get to welcome Nicole Conner, who is the internal charitable consultant for Raymond James. As an internal charitable consultant at Raymond James Charitable, Nicole specializes in advising financial advisors and their clients in effective charitable giving strategies, something near and dear to my heart, with a particular focus on donor advised funds. Having spent the last 2 years at Raymond James Charitable and with nearly a decade of experience in the nonprofit sector, Nicole brings a wealth of knowledge and experience to her role, which is why we're glad to have her.
Absolutely.
Prior to joining Raymond James, she held several roles in operating nonprofits, including Chief of Staff for the Tampa Bay History Center in Tampa, Florida, no surprise, and in donor relations and stewardship at the Combined Jewish Philanthropies in Boston, Massachusetts. Nicole holds a Bachelor's of Arts in Mass Communications, a Master of Business Administration, and a graduate certificate in Management and Non-Governmental and Nonprofit Organizations from the University of South Florida. Her diverse educational background and extensive experiences makes her a valuable resource for those looking to make a meaningful impact through their philanthropy. When not supporting her financial advisors and their clients with charitable giving strategy, Nicole spends her time with her husband Xavier and their 2 rescue pit bulls in their home in Tampa, Florida. Nicole, so glad to have you.
Welcome
Thank you for joining
to the
us.
podcast.
Thank you. I am very excited to be here. Always happy to spread the word about charitable giving.
So now that we got all that out of the way, Nicole, so why are you the smart one that we should be talking to about this?
Yeah.
I saw a lot of stuff just on this piece of paper here. So tell us more.
Yeah, I was about to say, I think Jeremy just covered most of that, but yeah, but yes, I have been a charitable consultant with Raymond James Charitable for a few years now, and my whole role is really focusing on educating and consulting with our financial advisors and clients on those charitable giving strategies, but particularly around donor advised funds. And so that is my day in and day out, every day at work, talking about donor advised funds, or DAFs, as you might hear me say from time to time during our conversation.
DAF for the listeners, DAF.
DAF.
Yep.
Yeah, we love a good acronym around here.
We do. We really do.
We do.
Well,
Yes,
I think
we
our
do.
profession is all into this.
Yeah.
So, all right. So you've been at Raymond James how long again? I know we read it, but now that I'm listening.
Just over 2 years. Just over 2 years.
So then what brought you to Raymond James?
So, I come from a nonprofit background, working in nonprofit administration for many years. But during COVID, I got a little bored and decided to pursue my MBA. That was an interesting time to be pursuing an MBA, but for me, working in nonprofits and then getting my master's in business administration, coming somewhere like Raymond James and Raymond James Charitable, it just really made good sense. It's a solid, I think, combination of my background and experience and education. So here we are.
And for our listeners, because I know not everybody has been following along with every episode, my company, Credentialed Wealth Advisors, is an affiliate essentially of Raymond James. We choose to custody our assets of our clients at Raymond James.
Oh, yeah.
So Nicole's part of Raymond James Charitable, right, which is underneath their umbrella, and I am a third party to Raymond James as well. So I guess affiliate is probably the wrong word. I shouldn't probably say that. But I choose as a owner of the company to hold our assets with Raymond James. That's what my relationship with Raymond James is. So everybody kind of understands that. So, all right, donor advised funds, huge topic in the world of giving.
Yeah.
Huge. Jeremy and I talked about on our One Big Beautiful Bill podcast that released 2 weeks ago, by the way.
We did.
That we talked about the fact that charitable giving is a really big piece of that bill that is affected. So let's start with, so Nicole, tell us about why donor advised funds are so popular and what makes them so popular.
Yeah, absolutely. So donor advised funds offer a simple, streamlined way to manage your charitable giving. And so you think of it almost like a charitable investment account. So you open a donor advised fund, you put money into that donor advised fund, those assets are invested, and you receive a tax receipt for the funds that you put into the donor advised fund. It's an upfront tax receipt because you are giving to a 501c3 when you're donating to a DAF. And then, like I said, those are invested, and then you can donate grants from your DAF out to charity at a time that makes the most sense for you. So I think what's really great about donor advised funds is the ability to donate to charity at a time that, from a tax perspective, is really beneficial to you, but also to stretch that giving out over several years. And so you can make that larger gift if it makes sense, but you aren't required to send it all to charity in that same year.
So, so if we have a client then that gave $10,000 this year, so I think examples are good.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
they could say, hey, I'm going to give it to this donor advised fund. We open an account with Raymond James Charitable and those assets are deposited. They can invest. They don't have to technically, right? They can kind of invest or not invest depending on how quickly they give the money away. Yeah.
So we would ask that the account be open for at least 1 year. But the investments are such that you could just put it into a money market fund, right? And so it would sit there and it would yield what that money market fund is yielding. So there's still investment opportunity there, but you can also choose various models in which to put that funding. So, anything from income-based to growth-based. So if you wanted to be more aggressive with investments, certainly you could.
Okay. So this
But
example.
yes, to your
Oh, go ahead. Finish up.
to your point, yes, absolutely. They could put the funds in and let it be in that money market and make grants out to charity over the course of that year.
Perfect. So, so $10,000 is given. They don't have to give it all in 1 year, though. They could
Right.
extend it to more years,
Right.
or
Absolutely.
whatever time period they really want, right? But they get the
Absolutely.
tax implication to their own personal tax situation in the year that they give it to the fund.
Exactly.
Perfect. So
That's
they would
correct.
have to do it for 2025 by the December 31st deadline, I guess. Or I'm sure there's an earlier cutoff than that because, you have processing all that stuff.
Right.
But, within the end of the year period of time that you would be
Right.
able to get it in before you can't. So what I'm saying that because it's not like taxes where you can, fund a Roth or a traditional IRA up till your tax filing deadline.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Your donor advised fund has to be funded in the year,
In
the
year.
calendar year that you give the money.
Yeah. Well, and I can tell you, I think, thinking about scenarios is, I've had this, and I know a lot of pastors have had this, where you've got somebody in your church and they get some kind of windfall. Like in our part of the world, a lot of oil and gas, people find out like, oh, I sold my rights or I got a lease payment or whatever. And suddenly they're flush with, kind of a one-time windfall. And they're like, what am I going to do with this? I want to give away some of it. and sometimes there's like, but they don't want to, they don't want to just dump it all on one person at one time, because not every charity, and especially when it comes to local churches, not every church can handle it. I mean, and they're
Right.
like, I want to do this, but now I want to be able to give, and now I want to be able to, fund my tithe for the next 10 years, out of this thing.
Right.
And we've not really had a mechanism for doing that. Or sometimes we have to do it within the life of the church. The fact that they can now set that up as a donor advised fund, you're like, okay, I'm going to take this windfall money that I sold something or whatever, put it in this fund, and I'm going to set it up. So I'm like, that I'm funding long-term my commitment to my church or my charity of choice or whatever. Like that's really neat, because I have actually seen church finance committees and everything try to struggle to figure out, what are we going to do with this one-time giant lump gift that we got, and
Absolutely.
then we got to set up a fund, and how are we going to spend it on. The fact that they can have some control over that, is good, and may incentivize them to actually do some of that giving, because do I trust this organization that I care about and love, with this extraordinary amount of money, and are they going to use it well? I mean, that piece of it is really exciting, and I have not had this opportunity come up since I have known about these funds, but I can tell you, the next time I hear about it, I'm gonna be like, look, let me tell you what you can do.
Presentation at the church soon, huh?
There you go.
Okay,
Yeah,
so
absolutely.
we have the premise of what a donor advised fund then is, and I like to think of it as, we all know the term endowments, and those are the big, problematic, cumbersome, lots of rules, all that stuff. We have our own at the church that we go to, and this is like a personal endowment, but it's more simple. I retain control, but it is a gift. I can't get it back. That's the one thing people have to understand. When you give it, you do not get it back.
Right.
You have
That's right.
control
It
of when
is
it goes
irrevocable.
out, but it does not come back to you ever.
And if I had this, I mean, I should never assume things, but my assumption would be, if I were to come to someone like you, Roy, and say, I've got this lump sum or whatever, and I want to set up this thing, I could also say, I want you to cut a check every year at this time to, this charity, and kind of let it be on autopilot a little bit as well. I know people do that with like minimum required distributions and, things like that. So, it'd be a way to kind of do it, and kind of even just get that on autopilot a little bit if you wanted it to be. Is that correct?
Yeah. I
Okay.
mean, to a point, it absolutely is. And it can be adjusted at any time. So you're
Right,
not.
because I could always say, never mind, don't do it. But
Yeah.
if I want to, I want this taken care of, and I want to know it's taken care of, and I live a busy life, but I want to make sure that, this check every 6 months, every month, or whatever goes out to this thing that I care about, I can just settle that up, and then it just goes.
Yeah, let's talk about that, Nicole, because let's talk about the fundamentals of how it works at the Raymond James Charitable. And so, step one, obviously, they have to have an account. Take us from there.
Right.
What happens? How does this work?
Step one, you gotta have some money.
Absolutely.
Gotta have some money. Yes.
You gotta have some money. So with Raymond James Charitable, we have an agreement with you, the donor, and Raymond James Charitable to establish the account. You then make your irrevocable gift to fund your donor advised fund. And as I mentioned, those are invested, and you make grants out to charity when it makes sense for you. To Jeremy's point, you can set those grants up to be recurring grants. So you can say, I want to give to my church or the Humane Society or wherever, monthly or quarterly in this amount. You can go into your Raymond James Charitable portal, enter that as a recurring grant, and it's just like set it and forget it. We handle the administrative side of the account. And so our team will say, okay, that recurring grant is ready to go. So we, get those funds out to the charity based on the timeline that you have indicated, and you don't have to worry about it from there. You can just go into your portal, make sure that that was sent, and it's good to go.
So it's pretty sweet in that regard.
Yeah.
And then where the advisor comes into play, donor advised funds,
There you go.
is, so for instance, I do have a client using this, and they do their own monthly giving stuff that they set up themselves, and it goes out through the grants that Nicole's referencing. But they did also have a large one-time grant. Well, we had a portion of their money was more liquid and available for the ongoing giving.
Mm-hmm.
But then we had a bigger portion that was also invested, and that needed to be liquidated. Some of that need to be liquidated for this bigger one-time grant they were giving.
Okay.
So that's where I would come in and help guide that. And it can be advisor-led, or like Nicole mentioned earlier, is that there's some models that can just be gone into as well,
Right.
that they've developed over at Raymond James Charitable to help with that too. But that's kind of how that works back and forth. And also, for my clients, this is one thing that's important. We try to make things easy. If I have a lot of older clients.
Right.
A lot of them don't want to get online.
Right.
They don't want to go into the portal, Nicole. So they do allow us as advisors at the client's direction to submit those grant requests as well.
Yeah. That makes sense.
That's correct, Nicole, right? I've done that,
is
so I'm
correct.
pretty sure that's right.
Okay, well, good. Yeah. Somebody probably would have told you. Who was it?
I'm sure they would have. So that's really cool. So then when we invest inside of those, we talked about a little bit of the tax benefits of, it's the charitable giving piece when you give it up front in the calendar year, but like, how does the taxation work within the account? I mean, can you talk about that? Is it just a normal, typical taxable account? Does the client have to deal with taxes on the growth if they invest it? How does that work?
They do not. So once they give to the donor advised fund, that's considered a completed gift to charity because we are a 501c3 public charity. And to that end, once those assets are with the charity, we typically would liquidate those and it would settle into the donor advised fund. From there, it would be invested in the client's determined model or working with the financial advisor, and it would grow tax-free because that's within the charity rather than with the client. The charity would not be taxed on any growth to those.
So sweet. So just
Yes.
like our church endowment, we could invest in there and we don't have to pay taxes on the gains.
Right.
It's the same concept.
Yeah. What I love about this is, I'm familiar with like there are a lot of like community foundation groups out there,
Mhm.
family foundations. If you've got large sums, you may, set up. My great grandfather did that back in Columbus. Before he passed, he took a lot of his estate and built a family foundation and it was a
Mhm.
great structure and it worked. But he was giving like $8 million. So it wasn't something that somebody with $10,000, could do because it just wasn't a structure that was set up for that. So when I first learned about it, it's like, oh, it's like this, but smaller. I mean, I'm sure you can put more if you want, but it kind of democratizes it down to kind of more everyday folks who maybe have smaller sums,
Right.
but want, a more sophisticated way to deal with it than just simply writing a check to charity every month, which, nothing wrong with that, by the way.
No.
Please do
Not
that.
at all.
To our listeners,
yeah.
he's willing to accept your money anytime you're willing to write a
anytime.
check.
However you want to do it.
So with that though, Nicole, is there a limit on how much can be given to this?
No, there is no limit. We have accounts of $10,000 and we have accounts that go much higher than that. So, even Jeremy, to your point, talking about the private foundation, I will say that a lot of individuals will choose a donor advised fund rather than setting up a private foundation. And oftentimes that's because private foundations require certain IRS filings and excise taxes and that sort of thing that a donor advised fund wouldn't require.
Right.
And so with a private foundation, you would have to distribute 5% of your assets and file a 99 DPF and pay excise taxes on that investment income. But that's not required for individuals with donor advised funds. And so some people, even if they are giving, say, $8 million to a charitable vehicle, will opt to do the donor advised fund instead.
I do talk to clients about this a lot because to do a private endowment or a family foundation kind of situation,
Mhm.
you got to have a lot of money to make it worth your effort.
Yeah.
Because it's a lot of work. And it's not even about the work. It's about the fees that you're going to be paying attorneys to draw all this up for you.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. It was quite a process.
So,
there's a lot more constraints. So this feels like it has a lot less constraints around, simpler structure, lot more constraints or a little less constraints around it, and even down to like the way the different foundations are set up, like decision making and who gets to make the decision about,
Right.
where the money goes. And so the fact that this stays within the person who gave the gift is the one that gets to continue to, direct where it goes is I think really, really attractive to people who want to do that big or small.
yes. And we're going to go into that next because That's our next piece.
Woohoo!
But before we do that, I just want to kind of close this loop a little bit. So a couple of tax situations that we just need to be aware of on how it functions is you give it in the calendar year, and it can go towards your taxes that year, depending on your situation. You talk to your tax professional to understand how that affects you. But once you put money in there, it's irrevocable and it can be tax-free growth, right? Which is pretty darn cool.
Yeah.
So that your gift can actually grow, and then that can impact your giving that much more at a higher level. So, and if you make trades inside, there is no taxation just going to occur. So the fact, one thing I always tell people that taxes are never a reason to do or not do something if it's the right thing to do. But it sure is nice when you don't have to think about taxes as part of that decision-making process, right?
Yes.
So that's a really nice thing as an advisor in placing trades, that I don't have to think about how is this going to impact their tax bill if we place this trade. So those are two really big pieces of that. And, a lot of people who give at higher levels have they have a high tax bracket typically. And for them to be able to do this is very beneficial to them.
Yeah,
absolutely. But not only big tax brackets, for people who just want to, like you said, give some money, get a little bit of a windfall. Maybe you got inheritance.
Yeah.
And you want to put a little of that money aside. And so you know that you can't spend it. This is a great way to be able to set that money aside for your future, philanthropy, if you will. So going into, from the taxation piece to, where did you end the last piece? Because we're going to talk about it and I forgot.
Oh, goodness. Don't ask me to remember.
Oh, boy. Nicole, did you know where we're at?
We were really talking about, the private foundation versus
Oh,
the donor
yes.
advised fund, and if there's a limit to how much you can put in. Yeah.
Yes. So with that being the case, then these donor advised funds, if you give to it, this is where I was going with it. By the way, I remembered. Let's say I give to it and I die. What happens?
Right.
How does that work? What are my options? What are the options that are available in the design of the donor advised fund?
Yeah, absolutely. So whenever you set up your donor advised fund, you can choose one of two options for succession. And so that can be individuals who would take over the gifting from the account upon your passing. And so that could be your children or your siblings or your next door neighbor, if you're best friends with them, whomever you would want to have take over that gifting from the account. Or you can choose what we call legacy giving, and that would allow you to choose charities to receive the funding upon your passing. And that can be a lump sum sent to them, or it can be, 5% annually in perpetuity. That's one option that individuals choose when they're looking for that longer term legacy giving. So, I'm not here any longer, but my name and my giving will continue to live on.
Okay, that's interesting. And then who would, in that situation, if you wanted to say, okay, I want this to just go on in the 5% a year, then I mean, who's managing it? Is that something that comes who manages the funds then? Just the advisor that you set it up through, or how does that work?
Right. Yep, absolutely. So your advisor is still involved with helping manage the account, or the investments of the account, I should say. But the administrative side of that, so making sure that those grants are going out based on your wishes, we actually handle that on our side. And so our grants team, they're monitoring that and making sure that we are carrying forward those wishes set forth by the client, so that their giving does live on.
That's fantastic.
So pretty cool, huh?
Yeah. I like it.
I just actually got an email from my client that we have donor advised funds with Raymond James Charitable, and it was about setting up the backside of it so that they did die.
Yeah.
What happens? So,
well, I hate to break it to you, Roy. We're all gonna.
I know. So there's a lot of things you don't want to think about sometimes.
No, I know, but you got to think about it.
Yeah. So that's pretty cool because you do have options, which makes it very nice for the people who are donating the money. Yeah. Big deal.
Yeah. And I will also say that, unlike with, say, a will or a trust or something along those lines, that would require you to go back to an attorney and redraft those documents. When it comes to updating legacy or succession for a donor advised fund account, it's really just a simple form submission. So you don't need to involve your attorney. You don't need to go back to the drawing board, nothing along those lines. You just submit a form, we make those updates, and you're good to go.
So it may be similar to like naming a beneficiary on a life insurance policy or something like that. A little simpler than, like an estate plan or anything like that.
Mhm. Yep.
Yeah. Oh,
Yep.
that's great. That's great.
Just a little paperwork. That's all.
Nuanced question. So if I say I have created a donor advised fund and for me and or the people in my household, and like my brother comes along and he's like, hey, I really like what you're doing with yours. Can he just give to the one that I set up, or does he have to set up his own?
He can do either.
Oh,
So if he wanted to just donate to your donor advised fund, certainly he could. And then he would be the one who received the tax receipt for that gift. So, it's not unlike giving to any other 501c3 in that
okay.
respect, in that you would get the tax receipt or your brother would get the tax receipt because he gave, right, to that 501c3. But then you would still maintain that donor advisor capacity
Right.
over the fund. So determining, the charities that the grants would go out to.
Okay.
So you can start one of these for your birthday every year and say, give to my donor advised fund.
Well, that was kind of what I thought. I was like, or in memory of somebody. If you lost a loved one and you wanted to set one up in like memory of somebody, you're like, hey, do you want to give to this thing? That kind of thing, I think would be kind of neat.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
And they can give all or none in any given year, right?
Yep.
So
Absolutely. There's no required annual distribution with a donor advised fund. And so, you can choose to give annually, you can choose to give 8 times a year, or you can skip 2 years if that's your preference.
Okay.
So, being in this field, Nicole, I get hit up by a lot of donor advised fund companies, right?
I'm sure.
So why and how is Raymond James Charitable different? And why would somebody want to pick them over maybe some other options that are out there? How are you guys unique?
Yeah, absolutely. So, we make sure that we have a relationship with the advisor who has the relationship with the client. And so we keep the advisor at the center of that relationship, but make sure that we're keeping the client happy as well. We use something called client access here at Raymond James. And so clients who have their accounts here at Raymond James, we can set up single sign-on so that they can easily access their donor advised fund when they are logged into client access. So they can just not worry about remembering any separate usernames or passwords, anything along those lines in order to access their donor advised fund with Raymond James Charitable. It also makes it easier to transfer assets over from a Raymond James brokerage account to the donor advised fund. From a fee perspective, we're competitive with other donor advised fund providers. And unlike, certain maybe community foundations or something along those lines, we can give to any 501c3 operating charitable designated by the IRS. So we don't have certain limitations like geographic region or certain causes that we would limit giving to. And so clients have options across the spectrum of those charities that they care about and want to give to.
So quick question. You made me think of this as you're explaining that. If somebody had inherited, let's say, a house and they want to give that to charity, would they have to liquidate that house and then put the cash into the donor advised fund? Or can the house be given to the donor advised fund and Raymond James Charitable would deal with that?
So the house can be donated to a donor advised fund. We actually work with a third party called Charitable Solutions, and they help us with the gifting of those more illiquid assets. So with Raymond James Charitable, when you open and fund a DAF, most individuals would just give cash or appreciated marketable securities in those situations. But there's always going to be those times when something like privately held stock or real estate would be the preferred gift to a donor advised fund. And so we work with that third party, and they would accept that gift of property, and they would give a tax receipt to the client upon the gifting of that real estate or privately held stock. And then they would move forward with the sale and or liquidation of that property. And from there, then they would send the funds, the proceeds from that sale, to the Raymond James Charitable Donor Advised Fund account. And so they handle those more complex gifts, but certainly it's an option for those to be given to a donor advised fund.
Well, and the reason I asked that question, just so you know too, Jeremy, is that if somebody doesn't have extended family and they just want money to go to charity,
Right.
but the problem, like we've talked about, is just to say that the whole estate of somebody went to a charitable entity of some sort. How do they handle that money?
Right.
Whereas if they can do a DAF and then have that money predetermined on how it's going to be doled out, right? Then that's a way that they can have control and have it kind of have a in perpetuity situation where it can continue to benefit that charitable institution.
Well, and most people, I mean, a lot of people, their wealth is in their house and their real estate and all of that and their kind of real possessions. So the fact that you can say, hey, this is just going to get dealt with, and you're not, and unfortunately, fortunately or unfortunately, however you think about it, there are more and more people who probably don't have direct heirs or whatever. I mean, we're
going to run into that more and more.
Yeah, we know people are having less kids. I mean, my sister's that way. I mean, it's just, so I'm just, I'm like, what are you going to do, with all this when,
Because then the excuse of my kids are my charity is gone.
Right.
I get that all the time. Okay, so then another question for you, Nicole, in regards to the giving, because you talked about moving a hard asset like real estate or a stock investment from a brokerage account. What about, so when you reach 70.5, and Jeremy and I have talked about this on the podcast before, but 70.5 is the age. It's the magical age where you can do what they call a qualified charitable distribution from an IRA or 401k type of account. So can a client give a QCD, qualified charitable distribution, from their IRA to a DAF? Is that allowed?
So it is not allowed. The IRS does prohibit a QCD or any distribution from an IRA to go directly to a donor advised fund or a private non-operating foundation. And the reason for that is they really want those distributions to go directly to those operating nonprofits, those boots on the ground organizations that have programs that are directly helping the public. And so the IRS does not allow for that at the moment. Some individuals see a benefit in taking a distribution from their IRA, paying the taxes on that distribution, and then offsetting a lot of that tax implication with a donation to charity. But in those instances, it's still not a completely tax neutral event, and it does require that extra step.
So then to extend that, let's say that, again, we have a situation where someone is single and they want to leave their retirement account beneficiary as a DAF. Is that allowed?
Yes, absolutely. So you can list your donor advised fund as the charitable beneficiary on IRAs, wills, trusts, life insurance policies. And, you can, if you have an active donor advised fund now while you're living, that can be a charitable beneficiary on any of those documents. Or you also just have the option of setting up a planned gift. And what that planned gift is essentially a shell account that is opened on our side, but it's not funded. And then upon that triggering event, so usually that individual's passing, when the assets are distributed from those estate documents, it would then be funded, and we would follow the wishes that the client gave to us related to that succession.
Which I do need to input something here because I have clients sometimes that will give to multiple charities. And like one client had 8.
Wow.
8. Now, if they pass away, I just want to explain to our audience what happens. I have to open an account with 8 different institutions. Go ahead and track those people down, get them to sign the documents.
Oh, wow.
Usually when you're giving them money, they're more willing, but it's still difficult if it's a bigger company.
Right.
So one of the things that can be done is the client can give it to the DAF and then the DAF can dole it out to the charities because they can just cut a check and it's done.
Gotcha.
Which is just a processing thing on my end, but it is very helpful when you have a lot of charities involved because it is difficult because it'll hold everything up.
Right.
For those different institutions, because you have to have it all at once.
Got it. That makes sense. Yeah.
Just a little FYI for everybody on how that works. So then one of the things for you, Nicole, being the expert that you are, what are some tips and tricks on how these are being used effectively? And we have this one big, beautiful bill that we've already kind of referenced, and how is that going to be impacting the usage of the donor advised funds?
So I'll start with your question related to what we're calling OB3, that One Big Beautiful Bill Act. So one of the great things that came out of that actually is that the 60% of adjusted gross income tax benefit related to a cash donation to a 501c3 is now made permanent. So there was once a time when that was only 50%. At some point, they made it 60%, and that is now a permanent part of the tax benefit related to your gifting. So once, where there was once only a ceiling that, up to 60% of AGI for cash and up to 30% of AGI for securities, there is now also a floor. So starting in 2026, itemized charitable deductions will apply only to contributions that exceed 0.5% of adjusted gross income. So for example, let's just say that your adjusted gross income is $350,000. This is just for illustrative purposes, not tax advice. Only donations above that $1,750, so that 0.5% of your adjusted gross income, would be deductible. So that does have, obviously an implication for 2025. Maybe you're looking to potentially accelerate your giving now to, not deal with that floor for the next couple of years, for example. And then for high earners, charitable deductions will be capped at 35% of the donation amount, down from the current top margin of 37%. And so, some people might consider accelerating their giving now, or looking at using a donor advised fund for a strategy that we call bunching. And that's the idea of combining 2 or more years of giving into a single year. So say giving $200,000 now that you plan on stretching over the next few years, rather than just $50,000 now, $50,000 next year, so on and so forth. And so some people are definitely looking at that as an option, so that they, can avoid that new floor for the next few years, potentially.
Jeremy, do you remember bunching?
I do.
We have talked about this, Nicole.
We have.
So I'm very happy you brought that word up. It makes me warm inside.
It helps me understand that Roy's just not making stuff up.
I'm not
there,
just
that I'm like,
making
it's like,
this
oh,
up.
this is a real thing, not just something that Roy made up.
So we've talked about that. So the One Big Beautiful Bill episode.
Right.
You want to dig more into this specific conversation? We did dig into that on the One Big Beautiful Bill podcast. So check that out, everybody. From a CPA, by the way, that is from a tax professional.
Yeah.
But it just baffles me why you would restrict on giving of all things. It just baffles me.
I've given up trying to make sense of tax law. You just got to know the rules, which is why you got to have like your tax professional, like we were blessed with that on our episode a couple episodes ago. And why, this thing, if you are my job is to play the layman here. And I'm just like, if your head's swimming a little bit, and I'm like, well, this is why you have a Roy, to help you figure all these things out.
And Roy has a Nicole, by the way, in the background.
Right.
So.
And Roy's got a Nicole. So if your head's swimming a little bit, you're like, oh, this sounds great, but I'm not sure. Well, great. But this is why you have, financial planners who, help you figure all these things out. And it's just a really cool tool for making sure that the good work that you want to do in the world is getting done. That's the piece of this too, is like we're kind of in the weeds and the nuance of how the taxes and everything else work, which is great. And you need to understand that. But at the end of the day, this is about, if you're giving to a charity, it's because you believe in the mission of that charity, you believe in the good work they're
Right.
doing, and you want to see that continue and you want to invest in it. And how cool is it that there is this vehicle to help you do it both now and after you pass? And if you choose to do it that way or whatever. I think that's really neat. And I love that we're incentivizing people and creating systems for people to invest in the good work that they care about, that's reaching the people or animals or whatever it is that they care about, the environment, whatever it is. How neat that we have these systems set up to do that in more sophisticated and tax efficient ways. I think that's lovely.
Yep.
So I just want to throw that in there, like if your eyes are glazing over a little bit, if you're listening to this, you're just like, don't forget, at the end of the day, this is about that thing that you care about and making sure that the thing you care about, whether it's saving the whales or whatever, or your church, or youth ministry or whatever, continues to get your support and your love and your concern, in an efficient way. I think that's great.
I do too.
And I don't know why you would limit that either. I'm like, give away all the money.
I love seeing your passion.
I know. I try to get on my soapbox too much, but every once in a while.
So, Nicole, we kind of touched on this a little bit, but I just want to give a little bit more clarity on, of all the people that exist out there, who's ideal to do this kind of a situation?
Yeah, what I love most about donor advised funds actually is just how accessible they really are. I mentioned that lower barrier to entry earlier. But from my perspective, anyone who's charitably inclined and is looking to maybe establish a legacy of giving, they're going to be great clients for this. Those who want tax efficient, flexible giving, high net worth individuals, families who are planning legacies, anyone with, maybe concentrated, appreciated assets that they're looking to donate to charity and offset those capital gains taxes. I think that if you're charitably inclined but want, the simplicity of giving over something like a private foundation, or just a way to track your tax receipts, because goodness knows I've been in the position where I have given to 5 places and lost one of those receipts, and now what? The DAF is going to be a great vehicle for just streamlining all of that,
I didn't even think
finding
of that part
what
of
you
it.
need. Yeah, the simplified accounting piece of it.
Oh man. Yeah. Okay. Sorry.
I feel like a light bulb just went off for you.
As much to Roy's chagrin as a TurboTax guy, I'm like, oh, every year it's like, oh, where's that receipt for that thing I did and all that kind of stuff, and I'm like, oh man, if I
Just
could
give to the
go
fund,
in,
baby.
I go into Raymond James Connect, just like, this is what you did, and I'm like, fantastic. Oh man.
So
Yeah, you get.
can anybody? So obviously I'm working with clients, and my clients can open these up through me. That's how it works. But let's just say we got some random person listening to this podcast who doesn't have anything to do with anybody, and they're just like, man, I want to know more about donor advised funds. Can they reach out to Raymond James Charitable directly and do it? Or do they have to have an advisor that they go through? How does that work?
They can. So you don't have to work with an advisor to open a donor advised fund with
But you
us.
should.
So certainly, yeah.
Thank you, Jeremy. I'll pay you later.
So certainly anyone can reach out to us and ask about how to go about opening and funding an account, and we're more than happy to help with all of that.
Very good. That's actually good to know, because there are a lot of do-it-yourselfers sometimes, and they'll call me, and if all they want to do is a donor advised fund, I'm like, well, that's not really what I do. Right. It's nice that I can at least tell them, like, hey, you can reach out directly, and they can help you with that. Yeah. So those people do exist.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
They do.
So we've covered a lot, Jeremy.
What
questions do you have? I mean, you from the nonprofit world that you live in, any specific things that have percolated?
Well, I wonder about, here where my head's going is I'm the pastor of a church. I also sit on the board of a couple of different charities. And I think one of the things that people don't get is how much of the good work in the world is actually funded through charitable organizations that are funded through, individual donors. Most churches you see are, that's the lifeblood of a local church. And I think those of us who are blessed to live in the United States, yet the U.S. is uniquely charitably inclined. And that's how we get a lot of the most important and, work that we do as a society, I think it's done through our nonprofit arms. So where my head goes is I wonder, about charities, themselves, finding ways to encourage people and make them aware, of these kinds of things and these kind of opportunities. Because sometimes, and again, I'm thinking about, those bigger gifts, those windfall gifts, I've heard this many times, like I've got this chunk and I want to give it to this thing. And it's not that I don't trust them, but do they have
Capable.
are they capable? If you're used to
Right.
receiving, for churches, we're used to receiving people's income on a regular, basis and
Right.
all that kind of stuff. These larger gifts or whatever, can sometimes, be, a challenge to figure out how to handle well. So being able to encourage people to say, hey, you can give to this thing, especially if it's a smaller charity. Right. I mean, if
Right.
it's United Way or Red Cross or something, they can take your money, no matter how big the chunk is. But if it's your local SPCA or if it's your, your church or your whatever it is,
Mm-hmm.
you may say, well, I'm not sure if I want to give, a large gift that they're, if that's going to be something they are sophisticated enough to handle. Like, well, you can do that for them. And so my head was like how. I think that's another group that would be interested in this kind of this understanding how these things work is the people, and especially the smaller charities that may be on the receiving end, and say, here's something you can encourage and educate your people on. We should send them out the link to this podcast. That's what all those
Absolutely.
little charities
You
should do. Send them a link to
should.
this podcast, and say, inform your people who are regular givers about this as a way of encouraging them to do it. So less of a question, I guess, but more of a statement, just kind of where my head's going as we talk is,
Right.
there's a world in there, being, if I was the executive director of a nonprofit, then, maybe one of the things I want to be an evangelist for is donor advised funds in general. And, and oh, by the way, don't forget us while you're setting it up.
Yeah, right.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Have you
And
worked
Jeremy, you
with
actually,
charities? Have you worked with charities who want to do that, who want to educate their people on how these things work? Is that something that
we
Raymond
have.
James has done through your work?
Yeah, absolutely. And so, we at Raymond James Charitable have done presentations to nonprofits. We've had financial advisors, reach out to us for information, and they have done those presentations to nonprofits as well. And so, yeah, I think that's a really great point, Jeremy, is these larger organizations like the Red Cross or whomever probably will know about donor advised funds, but that doesn't mean that every nonprofit does, right? And while it's growing and becoming a more popular vehicle, a lot of nonprofits or individuals just don't know that it exists and that it's an option for having those planned giving conversations or those, conversations with your patrons who are having high liquidity events, something along those lines. And so, we love educating everyone.
Right.
So nonprofits, financial advisors, clients on donor advised funds and, how it might be a really good giving vehicle for them.
I'm embarrassed to say I had not heard of them until they came up in the context of, I think, one of our podcasts or something in the last year or so. And I've been in the church and nonprofit world for, 15 years. So
Right.
I was just like, oh, like, so to me, that says others don't as well. So I
Right.
think, this, I think, democratizes some sophisticated tools for everyday people, which is great. But I think it also opens up some opportunities for smaller charities, local charities, community groups, that kind of things. I mean, there's tons of 501c3s in the world, big and small, to
Yeah.
say, oh, like that, this is something we can encourage our folks to do who care about us, that, that even though, they may not be huge donors, but they have the capacity to do something, or if the question comes up or whatever, you're like, oh, actually, there's a solution to that. I think that's really
Right.
neat. And I think
Well,
anything that encourages people to give of themselves and, be part of, the good work that nonprofits do around them, I think is critical.
I went to a conference, was it probably March-ish this year? Somewhere in that range. It was for Financial Planning Association.
Mm-hmm.
And, you get a bunch of financial planners in a room and it gets real geeked out real quick.
Oh, I bet.
But I will tell you, the donor advised fund session was gigantic
Oh,
in the interest and the amount of people using them. It is the fastest growing charitable giving segment right now
wow. I believe it.
out there. So it was really quite interesting to see and experience, and a lot of us financial planners are getting definitely on that train to help people be able to manage how they give,
Right?
Because they want to give, they just don't maybe want to give it all at once, and we've hashed that. But it's really a nice option for people. It really is. It just the flexibility that Nicole opens up with is truly, I think, the number one benefit of it.
Okay. All right.
Well, Nicole, do you have any last tidbits for our audience as we close this out? It's been really interesting and definitely informative.
Yeah, absolutely. So, for anyone who is maybe thinking about charitable giving, considering something like a donor advised fund, I would just always say, start with your giving goals to determine if it makes the most sense. Think about the causes that matter the most to you. And, DAFs are going to simplify that giving. They're going to maximize impact, and they can help build that philanthropic legacy. And even small contributions, as we've discussed, because they grow tax-free, can grow into something really meaningful over time. And so just remember, I think if I were going to leave you with anything, it's remember that giving is as much about the heart as it is about tax benefits. And I know we've talked a lot about the tax implications of a donor advised fund, but I know how personal giving is to people and how close it sits to their hearts. So a DAF is going to make it easier to plan, grow, and give strategically, but you're really going to want to start with, what matters most to you.
Most people's dogs, by the way.
Yeah, dogs.
I get a lot of people
Definitely
wanting to
my
give
dog.
to animal
Oh, sure.
animal nonprofits. Seriously, a lot of people are wanting to do
And
that.
a lot of those are smaller and local,
Yep.
and there's more of a that kind of thing.
Huge
Which makes
growing
sense.
demand for dogs and animals and cats and all this fun.
Absolutely,
things.
absolutely. Well, that's
Yes.
because they don't have kids. The dogs are their charity.
That's right. That's right.
I
So-
am that person.
Yeah.
You have your dog in your will, and who's taking care
I
of
wasn't.
them?
I wasn't gonna call you out, but when your dogs are in your bio, I'm like Nicole's a dog.
She's a
All right.
doggy.
So, Nicole, where would people, if they're interested in doing this, especially interested in learning more about what Raymond James can do, where would they go? What do they Google to find either you or find the information they're looking for?
Yeah, absolutely. So if you already work with a Raymond James financial advisor, you can touch base with them and certainly they can guide you appropriately. But if not, if you visit raymondjamescharitable.org, that is our public-facing website, and we'll give you a lot of the information you would need, including how to reach out to us.
Fantastic.
Wow.
All right.
Thank you so much. And we do have an ending disclosure, just to be clear. I don't want you to end this too soon.
Okay.
So, Nicole, thank you. It's been awesome having you.
Of course.
It's been very informative.
Thank you.
We really appreciate your insights and your expertise. And I'm going to say this as a reminder, Raymond James Charitable is the brand name for the Raymond James Charitable Endowment Fund, an independent nonprofit organization with a donor-advised fund program. Raymond James Charitable is a client of Raymond James Trust and is not an affiliate. Is that everything I need to read?
Sounds like it. All right. Well,
Sounds
and then just as a reminder, you've been watching the About podcast, and we're so glad you are. Please like and subscribe. If you have interest in this area or know somebody who does, who cares about charitable giving or maybe a charity in your in your community that you're like, man, I wonder if they know about this potential opportunity for their folks. Share this episode with them. That really helps. Like, subscribe, all of the things. If you got questions about charitable giving or really anything personal financial planning related, do make sure you send that in to us and let us know. We love your questions. They help us drive the content that we provide. So great. Well, thank you, Roy, for
Thank you,
another fantastic guest. You know so many wonderful people.
Always fun. Always fun. Thank you, Nicole, again.
Thank you, Nicole.
Absolutely my pleasure. Thank you guys for having me.
CWA is a Securities and Exchange Registered Investment Advisor. No content contained herein should be construed as an offer for investment advice or an offer for the purchase or sale of any security, insurance, or other investment product. Investments involve the risk of low loss, including loss of principal. Please consult with a qualified financial, tax, or legal professional before implementing any strategy presented here. Data presented here are obtained from believed reliable sources but cannot be guaranteed as to completeness or accuracy.